Hey everyone, ready for a deep dive into something pretty heavy.
Yeah, definitely.
We're going to take a look at the aftermath of this intense DNA that just hit the Valencia region of Spain.
Right.
I know you sent over this article,
Yeah.
al menos 51 muertos en Valencia por la DNA más intensa de este siglo. So I think you really want to go beyond just the headlines here.
Yeah, it's definitely a heavy topic and the article doesn't hold back in
Yeah.
terms of the details. To give you an idea of the scale, we're talking 445 liters of rain per square meter.
Wow.
Just to put that into perspective, that's more than London gets in an entire year, all within a few days.
Okay, so not just a little rain.
No.
And 51 confirmed deaths in Valencia alone, plus 6 people still missing in Albacete.
Yeah.
I'm seeing images of people trapped on rooftops, cars being swept away. It's just heartbreaking.
Yeah, it is difficult to grasp the scale of this disaster. The Magro River, which usually, meanders peacefully,
Right.
turned into a raging torrent. Bridges collapsed, roads swallowed up, entire neighborhoods just inundated.
It mentions a DNA, but I have to admit I'm not totally clear on what that is exactly. I mean, doesn't Spain get a lot of rain anyway?
Yeah, so DNA, it stands for Depression Aislada in Niveles Altos. It's kind of like a pocket of cold air that gets stuck high up in the atmosphere.
Okay.
This creates a really unstable situation and can lead to sudden, extremely intense downpours. Not your typical rainy day, that's for sure.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And this wasn't just any DNA, right? The article calls it the most intense one this century, even more so than the one back in 2019.
Exactly. They're actually comparing it to some huge storms from the 1980s to highlight how extraordinary this event is.
So with all this rain and destruction, the question that immediately pops into my mind is, was there any warning?
Well, Spain's meteorological agency, AEMET, did issue a red alert, which is their highest warning level.
Okay, a red alert, that sounds serious.
Yeah.
But then why were so many people caught off guard? You'd think with a warning like that, everyone would be hunkering down.
Right. That's what's so perplexing. It seems life in many areas went on as normal, at least initially.
Mm.
The official alert from Protection Civil urging people to stay put didn't actually come out until later in the day.
That is strange. So are we talking about a delay in the warning system itself?
Hmm.
Or is it more about how people react to those warnings? Maybe not taking them seriously enough.
That's a really crucial point. You can have the most sophisticated technology in the world,
Right.
but if people don't understand the risk or don't act on the information, it's not going to be effective.
It's like you see a caution, wet floor sign, but you're in a hurry and think, it's probably fine. And then you slip and fall. Except here, the stakes are obviously much higher.
That's a great analogy. It really highlights the human element of disaster preparedness. It's not just about the science and the technology, it's about understanding how people perceive and respond to risk.
And in this case, the risk was tragically underestimated.
Absolutely. And it raises some really important questions about the effectiveness of warning systems, particularly in a world where extreme weather events are becoming more common.
Which, of course, brings us to the elephant in the room, climate change.
Right. Because whenever you see an event like this, it's natural to ask, did climate change play a role?
Yeah.
And the article does quote an expert, Ernesto Rodriguez, who points out that warmer air and sea temperatures lead to more intense rainfall events.
Makes sense. Warmer air, more moisture, bigger downpours.
Yeah.
But I also know scientists are careful about attributing any single event directly to climate change without doing a lot of analysis.
Exactly. It's a complex issue, and there are a lot of factors at play.
Right.
But what we can say is that the science is clear. Climate change is intensifying the water cycle, leading to more frequent and severe extreme precipitation events.
So even if we can't definitively say climate change caused this specific DNA, we can say that it's creating the conditions for these sorts of events to become more likely and more extreme.
Precisely. It's like, imagine you're rolling a dice. Climate change is loading the dice, making it more likely you'll roll a 6.
Uh-huh.
And in this case, a 6 means a devastating DNA.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a powerful way to put it. And it underscores why we need to be talking about climate change, not just in the context of far-off future scenarios, but in terms of its impact on events happening right now in our lifetimes.
Yeah, it's almost like this DNA in Spain is a sneak peek into what the future might hold if we don't take action.
Yeah.
And that makes me think about the warning systems again. You mentioned they're becoming even more important as these extreme events become more common.
Right.
But are our current systems really up to the task?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And honestly, there's no easy answer.
Right.
This DNA really highlights the challenges.
Right.
Even though there was a red alert, the most devastating impacts were often hyper-local and very difficult to predict precisely.
Oh, wow.
You could be in one town that's completely underwater while the next town over is relatively unscathed.
So it's not just about issuing broad regional warnings. It's about being able to pinpoint exactly where and when the worst of the storm will hit.
And that level of precision is incredibly difficult even with our current technology. It's like trying to predict exactly where a single raindrop will land in a downpour.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a bit mind-boggling. So then what can we do? I mean, if we can't predict these events with perfect accuracy, how do we make sure people are prepared?
Well, I think there are a few key areas we need to focus on.
Okay.
One is improving the communication of risk.
Okay.
It's not just about issuing warnings. It's about making sure people understand what those warnings mean and how to act on them.
Right, because a red alert might not mean much if you don't know what actions to take. What does that actually look like in practice? Evacuate, board up windows, head for higher ground.
Exactly. People need clear, actionable information, and it needs to be tailored to their specific location and circumstances. Telling everyone in a region to evacuate might not be feasible or even necessary.
And I imagine the timing of the warnings is crucial too. The article mentioned that the official alert to stay put didn't come out until later in the day. By then, for some people, it was already too late.
Absolutely. There's this delicate balance between issuing warnings early enough to give people time to prepare,
Right.
but not so early that they become complacent or ignore them altogether.
It's a tough one. But it seems like effective warning systems are only part of the solution. What about individual preparedness?
That's the other piece of the puzzle. Even with the best warning systems, there will always be some level of uncertainty. So individuals need to take responsibility for their own safety and be prepared for the unexpected.
I remember seeing photos of people who had emergency kits ready with water, food, flashlights, all the essentials.
Right.
Those folks seemed much calmer and more prepared than those who were caught completely off guard.
Exactly. Having a plan and being prepared can make a world of difference. It's about knowing your evacuation routes, having essential supplies on hand, and being able to communicate with loved ones in case of an emergency.
So it's this two.
Gas emissions and tackling the root causes of climate change are all essential to mitigating the risk of these extreme events in the long term.
Right. It feels overwhelming to think about all the things that need to happen.
Yeah.
But I keep coming back to those images of people trapped on rooftops waiting for rescue. It's a stark reminder that these are not just abstract problems. They have real human consequences.
You're absolutely right. It's easy to get lost in the science and the policy debates, but ultimately this is about people's lives, their homes, their communities, and that's what we need to keep front and center.
So where do we go from here? This DNA in Spain feels like a wake-up call, not just for Spain, but for the entire world. We can't just wait for the next disaster to strike. We need to be proactive.
Absolutely. We need to be having these conversations, asking tough questions, demanding action from our leaders, and making changes in our own lives. Because ultimately, this isn't just about surviving storms. It's about building a more resilient and sustainable future for everyone.
And that brings up a really important question. You've talked about the need for systemic change and individual action. But how do we strike that balance?
Yeah.
Where does the responsibility lie?
That's the question, isn't it? It's easy to feel overwhelmed by the scale of the problem and think, what can one person really do?
Yeah.
But the reality is every action, every choice we make contributes to the solution or to the problem.
It can feel like a bit of a chicken and egg situation, you know?
Right.
We need systemic change to address the root causes of these disasters.
Yeah.
But we also need individuals to be prepared and resilient in the face of these events.
And it's not an either situation. It's both. We need governments and institutions to invest in climate-resilient infrastructure, improve warning systems, and create policies that incentivize sustainable practices.
So bigger picture things like updating building codes, investing in renewable energy, and creating better evacuation plans.
Exactly. But at the same time, individuals can make choices that reduce their own carbon footprint, prepare their homes for extreme weather, and advocate for change in their communities.
It makes me think about that, saying, think globally, act locally. We need to keep the global context in mind,
Right.
but focus on the actions we can take right here, right now.
And those actions can be surprisingly simple. Things like using public transportation, reducing energy consumption at home, supporting businesses that prioritize sustainability, and talking to friends and family about climate change.
Because even those small individual actions, when multiplied across millions of people, can start to create a ripple effect.
Absolutely. And don't underestimate the power of collective action.
Yeah.
Joining community groups, contacting elected officials, and supporting organizations working on climate change solutions can all make a difference.
It's about raising awareness, putting pressure on decision makers, and demanding a better future for ourselves and for generations to come.
And let's be honest, it's easy to feel discouraged or overwhelmed when faced with a challenge as big as climate change. But remember, every step in the right direction, no matter how small, is a victory.
Yeah, it's like building a bridge brick by brick. Each individual action might seem insignificant on its own, but together they create something strong and lasting.
Exactly. And this DNA in Spain, as tragic as it is, can serve as a catalyst for that bridge building. It's a stark reminder that we can't afford to wait any longer.
We have to act now.
Mhm.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's go back to the human element of this tragedy. 51 confirmed deaths.
Yeah.
Families and communities forever changed by this event. It's a sobering reminder of what's at stake.
And it underscores the urgency of finding that balance between individual responsibility and systemic change. It's about acknowledging that we're all in this together and that every action we take or don't take has consequences.
It's about choosing to be part of the solution rather than part of the problem.
Exactly. So as you reflect on this DNA and the questions it raises, we encourage you to consider what steps can you take both in your own life and in your community to build a more resilient and sustainable future.
Because the choices we make today will determine the world we inherit tomorrow. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. It's been heavy for sure,
Yeah.
but hopefully it sparked some ideas and inspired you to take action. Till next time, stay curious and stay engaged.